Hello, I'm Crimson Clover, and welcome back to Clover Reads. Today I have 3 short, wholesome stories for everyone. The first is from a deleted user titled 29 Men Met a Girl, 28 Female, who stole my parking spot and my heart. I like the question mark. So I'm still processing this, and I don't really know what to think, but here goes. A little backstory. I work crazy hours in construction, pipe fitter if anyone's curious, so I'm usually dead tired after work. Today, after a 10-hour shift, I was on my way home, dreaming of collapsing on my couch with a cold beer and not thinking about still pops for a while. I pull into my usual grocery store because my fridge is a wasteland, and just as I'm about to park, this tiny car zips in from the other direction and steals the spot. Like, absolutely no hesitation. I was fuming. I was so ready to yell something, but I see the driver get out and well, I wasn't expecting her to be so cute. She's holding this ridiculous oversized tote bag, clearly frazzled, and starts fumbling with her phone, probably not even realizing what she's done. So naturally, I park a few spots down, still grumbling mind you, and head in. I bump into her in the produce section. She looks up from expecting some avocados and immediately recognizes me. I see her eyes widen, and before I can think of saying something clever, she blurts out, "I am so sorry for stealing your spot. I didn't even see you, I swear!" Probably hoping not to get yelled at. At this point, my anger is mostly gone, so I just chuckle and say, "It's all good. I just didn't expect a grocery store speed racer today." She laughs, and we start chatting. Turns out she just moved to the neighborhood, and her brain was fried from unpacking all day. Perfectly understandable. We kept running into each other as we shopped, so we ended up walking together through the aisles, comparing favorite snack foods, complaining about overpriced almond milk. Seriously, why? And sharing random life details. I even helped her reach a box on the high shelf. Tall guy perks. When we get to the checkout, we exchange numbers, just in case they needed to share where all the best parking spots were. It's been a couple of days, we've texted back and forth. No big plans yet, but I kind of feel like I owe that parking spot thief a drink. TLDR, a girl stole my parking spot, and instead of getting mad, I ended up getting her number. Maybe I'll get a date out of it too? Well, good for you, OP. Even if you don't get a date out of her, hey, at least maybe you've made a new friend. It's always good to have more friends. And moving on to our second story today, we have one from Agent JJ1, titled Wholesome Encounter at a Tabletop Venue. A little context here, I am a trans woman with an awful lot of body image issues. One day, a couple of years ago, I went into town before my weekly D&D session to run a few errands. It was spring at the time, and the weather was getting warm enough that people started to wear more summery outfits, and I had, and continue to have, a big problem with comparing myself to others. By the time I make my way to the game store for D&D, I feel wretched about myself. I feel too big, blocky, and misshapen. I feel like I am a nightmare made flesh. Aww. OP, I'm sure that's not true. There I am in the game store, before my group got there, drowning my sorrows in McNuggets. Interesting calling them McNuggets instead of chicken nuggets, but oh well. Feeling I must look at my absolute worst right now, when suddenly I hear a small voice trying to get my attention. There's a girl who couldn't be older than 12 there. I was in my early 30s. She's asking me if I play D&D, and if I could take a look at her character sheet before her group gets here. When I shake myself out of my surprise, I look it over and everything seems good. She's made a fairly balanced wizard. I hand her back her sheet, and she thanks me before happily skipping off. It's such a small thing, but it made me feel so much better. If this little girl thought I was the most approachable person in the room, I couldn't have been that bad. I still think of it when I get too into my head about how I feel I look, to remind myself that others could be seeing something entirely different from what I imagine myself to look like. And this happens to a lot of people. And a couple of comments, first from Kippo Baker. That's beautiful! D&D should always be welcoming. I'm so glad you had this experience for both you and her. And I agree with this comment. And the second comment from Tony Pizzarelli. I like the name. This literally made me cry. It was very sweet of her and of you. Yes, that was a very sweet encounter. So remember, we are often our most critical critics. Our own worst enemies a lot of times. And it goes for appearance, it goes for talents, anything that you do. We are frequently our own worst enemies there. And moving on to story 3, we have one from Itachi Girl titled A Yearbook for the Senior. This happened to me in high school, and I think about it often. I was a senior in high school and was part of our journalism class that created a school yearbook. It was a great class since I could take photos, get into any school event for free, and eat off campus when we went out for ads. I spent the most time in the yearbook room since I loved writing and had early released my second semester, dismissed at 1. We were assigned certain pages, and I finished most of mine before the second semester even started. Towards the end of the school year, when time came to purchase a yearbook, I was the only one in my journalism class who didn't purchase one, reason being it was too expensive. I was a senior after all. I had so many other things to pay for. My senior pictures, my class ring, the senior trip, and my prom dress. I was in marching band and winter guard, which were $100 each with a band trip costing $300. I have never heard of winter guard. I'll have to look it up later. I appreciated my single mother being able to pay for all of this. Since my older sister had already graduated 2 years before, it was easier to save. Not much though, because we were both in marching band my freshman and sophomore year. One day, after all the yearbooks had been delivered to students, my journalism teacher, Mrs. Blake, called me to her desk. I imagine she had some papers for me to grade, because she knew I wanted to be a teacher, and she would let me grade them sometimes. I'm not sure about the ethics of that, but I'm glad you had a good fun with your teacher. I stood at her desk nervously. I will never forget this conversation. Mrs. Blake, are you going to buy a yearbook this year? And no. Why not? Well, my mom is paying for winter guard this year, and she's also paying for my senior trip and marching band cruise, so we can't really afford it. Your marching band went on a cruise. Mrs. Blake, oh, okay, nodding her head. Well then, here. Lifts and drops a yearbook that was sitting on her desk toward me. I just looked at her dumbfounded. Are you sure? Mrs. Blake, yes, you worked hard on it as well as all the other books. I worked on a school superlatives book as well as a school poetry short story book. Are you sure? Asking again. Mrs. Blake, yes, nodding. Me, thank you, gave her a hug. Oh. I took the book and placed it in my backpack for safekeeping. When I got home, I placed it on my bookshelf in my room. It was the only yearbook I ever received while in high school. I wish I could say I still had it. Unfortunately, before leaving for college, we discovered termites in my room. They were behind my wooden bookshelf, and they had eaten through the spine and cover of the yearbook, so I had to get rid of it. Oh, that's so sad. I was, and still am, upset about getting rid of it as it was Ace's 50th anniversary. I still think about Mrs. Blake's generosity and carried that into my teaching whenever I can. TLDR, my journalism teacher gifted me the yearbook I spent a year working on, and that is incredibly sweet of your teacher. I hope that Itachi girl is having fun being a teacher, and may she have many good students, and give those students the same good memories that her journalism teacher gave her. And that's where I'm going to call things for today. I hope you found these stories uplifting and relaxing, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!